and welcome. Today I have a really exciting guest. It's Angela Rosoff. Angela is a professionally trained chef who has recently made the decision to switch to a vegan diet. So we're going to be learning more about her food journey and what it was that caused her to make this decision. So perhaps, Angela, you could start us off by just giving us a little bit more about your background and your training and your passions and so on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate your invitation. So thank you. So I am currently an Ayurvedic nutritional coach and a health coach. I work with people who are struggling generally with making some transition into middle age. I generally work with people who are in their mid 30s and up. And I came to this work after being a professional chef. I was a professional pastry chef, and I also worked the line in fine dining restaurants. And I was a private chef at different points. People in culinary arts tend to do lots of different things. And I have a classical training, a French training, and I'm an omnivore, like by birth, by training. And as I got older, I found that those rich, heavy foods, I just am not able to digest them as easily as I was once able to. And I really came to discover this through an allergy that I had. It's been about 5 years ago. An allergy that came up, and it gave me a really horrible rash on my face, around my mouth. And it took about 2 years with different kinds of patch tests and specialists to understand that I have a food allergy to propyl and octyl gallate. And those are preservatives, and they're fat stabilizers generally in preserved foods. And I was puzzled. I'm just like, what is going on? So I did an elimination diet and found that something that was very aggravating that I had thought would be helpful was drinking bone broth. So bone broth at the time was aggravating this allergy despite it not being the allergen. And it got me to thinking, like, well, if this is, because this is my digestive tract, it was like I could see it around my mouth, but it was also my digestive tract was inflamed. So if that was happening, and I had learned in Ayurveda that this is a very nurturing medicinal application of food, is to drink bone broth, to heal tissues. So it got me like concerned and thinking and starting to think outside of the boxes that I learned from, which was classical cookery and then Ayurveda, and working with an Ayurvedic practitioner who also agreed that the sources of the meats that we're digesting are not really worth hanging on to those traditions. And if you do know the source, and if the source is healthful and humane, then it's a different story. But where I live, and the access to that kind of uniquely farmed food is not very easy to be found. So it kind of got me on this like new train of thought, like, well, what is the benefit? If I'm not allergic to this and it's causing problems for me, is it really helpful? And it just became a different change of my mindset, starting to think about this a little more critically, because it actually took me back to my childhood, that I was reared as an omnivore. My grandfather, who raised cattle for the family, so we ate meat that was supplied, a humane way, and we loved the animals. But he, in his elderly ages, so when he was about 60, he stopped eating meat. but he would serve it to us. And I remember, so all of this kind of flooded back this memory of this. And I remember asking him, why don't you eat the hamburgers, that you're making for us? And he said, I don't feel like I need that kind of food anymore. Like it just didn't sit with him, as he wasn't able to digest it as easily because he's older. So, just sitting with these ruminations and really like having a new, clearer look at my own health through my aging process, and learning from an allergist who also she was also very experienced in endocrinology. It became clear that this was a hormone related allergy that came up. Like this just came up because I was going into perimenopause. And after all of this happened, I began to understand that many meats are estrogenic and can really, and you can speak more eloquently about this, but it can really change how our bodies react if we are having a hormone flux in our body. It's very indicative of other parts of our wellness and how balanced we are as humans, as patients of Ayurveda. So that sort of like inflammatory kind of food can really present symptoms at certain ages of our life. Whereas when we're young, we're able to eat that kind of food, a little more easily and not really show those kinds of signs and symptoms.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now you mentioned bone broth, that you initially went towards that as some kind of, that it might help, but it didn't. What was it that made you think of bone broth?
So in Ayurveda, bone broth is a very healing application to heal, to internalize, like to drink, to heal tissues. So when individuals typically have any kind of illness related to the digestion or the skin, hair, and nails, bone broth is known to be helpful to heal those kinds of problems with the bone marrow that's inside. You roast the bones and then you cook the bones with the marrow for a long time, and you're able to draw out the collagen and the minerals in the bone broth. So it's thought that ingesting that as a tonic or a soup or a drink, that it can just help to amend any kind of skin issues. So that wasn't the case for me. It caused more problems.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk about bone broth, and even at the local market here where I live, they were selling it, and it was like, to me as a vegan, like, oh, so gross to think that you would be doing that with animal bones. But yes, it's amazing what people turn to.
No, it's true. And it's not clear to me that it actually does help. I haven't seen that actually really work for many of my clients. If anything, leaving animal products to the side helps to rejuvenate their skin and really fosters a clearer complexion overall.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely helps your skin. I've mentioned before, but my son had terrible acne, like, a very severe type of acne. It was like spots on top of spots, so disfiguring. And he tried everything, and he even took antibiotics, everything. And the only thing that cleared it up was when he switched to a vegan diet. And now he has it's all gone. It's completely gone. I just made a world of difference. So yeah, it definitely does wonders for the skin. Okay, well, thank you for giving us that information. That's an interesting journey that you've been on there. And oftentimes it is something that affects us personally like that causes us to think again about our diet, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a real strong motivating factor to look at what might be causing it and what could help. Yeah. Okay,
Absolutely.
so you're a professionally trained chef. That is so exciting. So you did, can you tell us more about that? Exactly what did you do?
Sure. So I went to culinary school, and during my time, I did an internship at a fine dining restaurant. And before that, I had been in I'd gone to fine dining restaurants, and the magic and is so attractive, and your people are celebrating their lives there. I love that sort of energy in a professional kitchen and fine dining, and there's always this like idea of elevation. But every restaurant that I worked in, everything was based on butter, cream, milk, and all of the meats and seafoods. And where I worked, they were all sourced out in the very best purveyors that were possible. So I feel like I worked with high quality ingredients. But so when I worked on the line and I was creating like main dishes and side dishes, the butter, the enrichment of butter, like you may not even know, like you might be getting a vegetarian meal, and it is probably laden in butter. And this is from, a few years ago. So I think restaurants are a little more forward thinking and really illuminating here in San Francisco anyway about what you're eating in the food that is on the menu. But I found that butter laden food to be something that I would remember as I started getting older. And my husband is on cholesterol medicine and blood pressure medicine for a number of reasons. But when we had our first child, I was like, we need to take care of ourselves. And all of this fine dining food I'm doing at home, it's not helping. So it was really in that moment, and this was so my daughter's 15, about 15 years ago, that I really started making the shift to sort of taking butter out of our diet in such a, high quantity form, and adding more olive oil and substitutes. So I started experimenting with substitutes then, about 15 years ago. And we kind of let go of more meats at that time and embraced more fish. We lived in Seattle, and fish is very easily accessed there. It's like such a big part of the culture. So when we moved to California, I was kind of missing the seafood. And the meat here where we live, the grocery stores, it would have required a lot of organization to source out a really great purveyor as a home cook. So we started limiting meat then, and that was about 10 years ago, and really embracing the bounty of seasonal produce here, because it's just prolific in California, especially here in the Bay Area. So that's when this vegetarian action began. And we would kind of have like a special, roasted chicken from time to time, or steak from time to time. But in the last year, really since I met you, Kim, and I saw your podcast, your YouTube with Dr. Tuttle, Mr. Tuttle, sorry, Dr. Tuttle.
Dr. Tuttle, yes.
Oh, right. And it really made a mark on my heart, and I really started changing my mindset, which is what I think is really required to make these decisions, because we live in a culture that is so heavily focused on a meat-oriented diet or dairy-oriented support in your diet. That I decided I really want to let this go.
Right, yeah. Because there's more to it than just thinking about our own health, isn't there? Which you would have picked up from that interview I had with Dr. Tuttle. Because, there's the animal, side of it all to be taken into consideration. Not only their suffering, but also the energy of that suffering that actually does somehow become entangled within the food. Because, you know, for anyone who studied, you know, metaphysics or even quantum physics or that kind of thing, we know that energy can be within the tissues, you know, within the tissues. And that adrenaline, that fear that an animal will feel as it's being pushed into the slaughterhouse, will somehow be encapsulated. And that can be passed on. I've heard of stories where people have been consuming lots of meat and it's actually made them more angry. And they haven't really noticed it. They haven't noticed it until they then gave it up. And then they felt more peaceful and calm. And it must have been this energy there that they were somehow picking up on. So yeah, I mean, that's a really important interview for anyone else to listen to sort of see the full picture of what's going on with the food that we're consuming.
Yes. You're very on the mark there. And I know in my study with Ayurveda, any kind of meat or meat product, any kind of dairy product that is being ingested, you really need to know where you're getting these sources from. And if you don't, it's always better to have a plant-based diet. It's just simpler. It's less complicated because of exactly what you said. A lot of the hormones that are being released by the animal when they're being milked, it goes into the milk. Mm-hmm. One little anecdote I wanted to share, and I didn't really get it in earlier, is I used to work at a bed and breakfast.
Oh yeah.
In the early days I was in culinary school, and the number of eggs that I used, I used so many eggs, and we did crack the eggs fresh, which is kind of a big deal in that kind of cooking. But I can't tell you how many weird eggs I saw. And these were industrial eggs that were, you know, they probably didn't have any time outside or anything like that. And I was like turned off from eggs after that because they aren't healthy, and the whites are very liquidy. And if you get a farm fresh egg, if you do ever do that, the white has a certain viscosity that it lifts up the yolk, but that isn't the case in those kinds of industrial kind of eggs. And
yeah, you can definitely see the difference. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Although I'm not in favor of eating either, but there's definitely a difference. Yeah, the way that the animal is treated is obviously going to affect, you know, their eggs or their tissues. It's obvious, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you recently decided that you're going to go the full way now. Over several years, you've been, you know, giving up meat and looking again at the butter and the cream and so on. But now you've made the decision. Is it in the coming year that you're actually going to take out all the animal products?
Yes. Yes. So the butter is one thing that is kind of hard for me to give up, and that one it's a struggle. I think because of my background in pastry, that one is kind of hard for me because it means giving up some types of products. But it's not impossible. And I'm really on the track for that. I love how my body feels and looks when, you know, now that I'm not eating meat.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've got a lot of sun here at the moment.
Yeah, take a minute.
It suddenly got really, really bright. Anyway.
Do you want to adjust you want to adjust your blind? And then you can.
I do need to, yeah.
You might like it. Might help you see.
There you go. That's better.
Oh, yay. Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah, so you recently did the Go Vegan Successfully course, and how did you find that?
Well, like I said, I've kind of been plodding along for years now, like eliminating from circumstance because we don't have the right sources. But then after, seeing the work that you're doing, Kim, and just having that reminder about how animals are treated on the farm, it made me really not want to eat meat anymore. So I have been cutting it out. So this is new for my family, and we have a little bit of a divided house, which isn't easy, but I just do what I need to do, and I bring an influence to my family. But for the most part, we eat vegetarian meals 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week.
Okay.
And generally it's when we eat out that the family will choose like meat or something like that. But I don't. And I'm always surprised at how many restaurants we go to where it's just like one vegetable entree option. I would like to see more because I feel that as a cook, as a chef, the canvas of the plate, which is how I look at a plate and like what you're creating to go on it, it can be much more dynamic and flavorful with lots of plant-based ingredients. So that's my hope, is to continue this year in creating this canvas of just more plant-based foods in my diet, and really just kind of letting go of the Parmesan cheese or these little last things that seem to be hanging on in my world.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure you will do it, because you sound like you're really determined. So I'm sure you will definitely get there. But it's interesting what you say there about the restaurants. When you go, there's so little choice, and I think that's one of the problems. There's definitely a hole there in the market, as it were, for someone to come along, several people to come along and set up some just really great vegan restaurants where you can go in and everything on the menu is vegan. Wouldn't that just be brilliant? I know that they exist, but we need more of them for sure.
We need more. And so having worked in a restaurant, I understand that red meat in particularly, it holds so well. It's easy to pre-cook it and reheat it. So I understand the mechanics of why that is, as far as a business goes. To have a really great vegetarian option, it requires more rigor in the kitchen, and it requires a holding pattern that is just different than what a lot of these restaurants are used to. So I understand it, but it's a bit boring, really. Like we went to a restaurant recently, and there were so many pork dishes in particular. I was just like, are people still eating pork? Like, it's so unhealthy.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of processed foods, sausages, salami, bacon, and even the World Health Organization has put them into a class 1 category as for carcinogenic foods. So
yes, that's so true.
I can't believe how many people just eat so much of that stuff. It's so bad.
I know. I think people, I work with people around food, and to me, what I learn from my clients is that it's really the food element in their life is such it's not really thought about too critically. Like, I think if you are eating animals in your childhood, it requires a real mindset around applying the principles of why you want to have vegetables, more vegetables, or exclusively vegetables, and a commitment, right? Like, so it requires a shift. And when the culture is supporting, an industry around farming animals, dairy in particularly is so supported by the US government. It really requires intelligence and intention to bring it all forward.
You're absolutely right. It's so ingrained into the culture. It needs a massive switch in thinking, really, in the way that we do approach our whole food production and intake. The whole thing is so ingrained, and it often takes, as we said earlier on, something that affects us personally to shift us and cause us to look again at this, which is sad, that it has to come to that sometimes. But it's often the way, isn't it? So yeah. So what did you learn specifically from the course? Anything that you particularly picked up that maybe you didn't know before, or any kind of inspiration that came to you through it?
Absolutely. Well, you did such a lovely job with your course, I have to say. Like you kind of brought me in slow, like a little bit slowly, just helping me understand my place. Like maybe I'm here because I'm letting go of something. It was very lovely. I didn't feel like you were like being aggressive with this, so I want to salute you for that. But what I really learned is the myths around why people hang on to eating meat, the B12 myth in particular, like that you're going to have only dairy sources or only meat sources to really have a well-balanced life. And that's not the case. So you really outline that very beautifully. And for me, I do read, and I have read this before, but the way you presented it, it just helped me understand it in a deeper way with the science that you bring into it with your background. That was very helpful. But the things that I really love are your even exchanges. So like buttermilk, you can add a little nut milk and rice, or like a apple cider vinegar. That one is really nice because buttermilk is like such a great product to make luscious pancakes and cakes. But it's a really great exchange, and with your help, I've been able to implement those changes in my diet, and it's fun. You had these great recipes for making nut milks too, which is just great. Oh, and the aquafaba from the chickpea.
Yes.
That is magical.
Isn't it? Yeah. And not very well known, but it is magical.
It is. I had no idea. And you can make little meringue. Like my daughter loves meringues. And like I said, I'm not crazy about using eggs. So using the aquafaba from the chickpeas, it helps to reduce waste. And it's just very savvy way to create a very similar product from the egg white meringue that is very common.
Yes.
So I
love
learning those tricks.
It's good to know, isn't it, that there is an alternative for every animal food source. There is something that can take its place and can be even better. I remember when I first started doing pancakes, and I'd always done pancakes with eggs, as most people do, but I found out you can substitute the egg with a banana. So I tried this. This is one of the first things I tried was pancakes, and used a banana instead of an egg. And the taste was better than with an egg.
Absolutely. Lighter
and sweeter. Yes, it's better.
And it is better. It's more tender. Yes. When we do it that way too. I find that eggs, they can be easily overworked, practically speaking, and then whatever it's in is very tough. So I like that one in particular. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. I'm so glad to know that it's been helpful.
It has. And then the little shopping guide.
Oh, yeah.
That little visual, I have it on the fridge. So then like getting it into my subconscious, and it's becoming very natural now to go to the grocery store and just have this in my head. So you really helped me organize that.
Yeah, I gave a lot of plant-based brands that I'd tried that I found helpful, and because this course is to help people go vegan, then I did include some of these transitional products, because going from that to this in one step is daunting for a lot of people and not really manageable. But if you've got a few little aids along the way, like some of these plant-based meats and so on, then they can just help. They're like a stepping stone. They can help you get there smoothly and easily. And there's a lot that I tried that I really didn't like, and I would never have them again. But there were some that I thought, yeah, that hits the spot. So I made a shopping guide with those brands on. So I'm glad that's been helpful.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And that's been helping my family. You know, I mentioned that they like the occasional, like a bolognese sauce. So using, what's the one that we really like? We use one of those, is it Impossible?
Impossible. There's
I
Impossible.
think it's the Impossible brand that I'm able to get easily. So on occasion, I'll make it with that, and they don't even notice.
No, that's right. Sometimes they don't even notice. It's incredible.
But I notice the lightness. It tastes lighter.
Yes.
You
Yes,
know,
it does. Yeah, I noticed that too. It tastes lighter, which is, it's nice. It's refreshing, isn't it? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. I know that you're an Ayurveda nutritional consultant. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that and how this diet might sort of work hand in hand with that.
Yeah, so Ayurveda is there's some speculation, but most people agree that it's about a 5,000-year-old system of, it's just sort of a practical system of how to live in alignment with nature. And there are some spiritual aspects to it, but Ayurveda in particular is very oriented toward the practical application of using herbs and foods to help heal the body, and really to leverage those things to avoid having to heal the body. So really just being in alignment with the seasons is very beneficial for our health and wellness, and it helps to attune our body to that diurnal nature, to the rhythms of the season. And it's just it's this modality that I love working with my clients to help them return to balance. It works every time if people will apply these principles. And I, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I stick to food and culinary herbs. There are some Ayurvedic herbs that I help my clients navigate, but really, those aren't entirely necessary if you're eating whole foods, fresh foods. So that's really where I work. The culture of this Indian subcontinent, I just have a great reverence for, and many of my doctors are from, many of my teachers are from that area. And like I said, it's an omnivore system of health. But now, in the year 2021, 2022 is coming up, they are really moving more toward a plant-based application of these principles, simply because even there, it's so hard to find good energy in slaughtered animals, or good energy in dairy that's not mass farmed. So, and eggs in particular, like eggs and fish too, the fish, like the oceans are so polluted. You know, any fish that we're getting is probably tainted in some way. So the energy just isn't good. So the modern day Ayurvedic practitioners typically move toward a plant-based program.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad that is the case. Yeah.
Yeah, it is certainly part of the conversation still. If there are like deep ailments in the organs of the body, there may be an application of sourcing out, you know, a healthy lamb to, you know, take in the flesh or the bones, however it would be applied, because there is that thought that matter like an equal matter of an animal can help the matter of a human. But it's in that principle that we see in the mass farming of animals, that the matter that you're eating becomes your matter. So if it's not healthy, it's not going to be healthy for you. And I really admire this move of the modern practitioners, because it makes the most sense.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. It's good that they stress so much that energy and the spiritual life force, don't they? And so obviously as they look deeply into that, they will obviously appreciate that any harm to the life force, especially when an animal is being pushed into a slaughterhouse, that kind of a thing, it's obviously not going to have a good effect. So that sort of stress on the life force is great in Ayurvedic work. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and it's the same for the vegetables too. Like, it's the same for the vegetables. So if the vegetables are not grown in a healthy environment or with good soil and fresh water, that it's the same there as well. So having fresh food that's organic, hopefully, where where the farm is, like it really goes pretty deep with the vegetables.
Yeah, it's having reverence for everything, isn't it?
Yes.
Often people will pray before they eat a meal, or say a blessing, or just be mindful of what it took to get that food onto the plate for them. And people can often dismiss that as a sort of a meaningless ritual in a way, and it can be if it's not from the heart. But if you do have a real heart feeling of gratitude for the food on your plate, I actually think, again, it's down to this energy and the life force. I actually think that can affect the food itself. And I think there's been studies done to show that is actually the case.
Wow. I love that there are being studies done about this. It's wonderful.
And I think even really, I don't know whether they're well-known yogis, but certain yogis will only employ their cooks who they know have a very spiritual approach to life and view life as sacred. And they know that then that they're putting these precious thoughts into the food that they're making for them. Because when you think about I know you as a chef, you will know yourself that when you're making food for someone, it is an act of love, isn't it? You're creating something to nourish somebody else. So the heart that you're putting into that will definitely be a part of it, and an important part of it, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's another facet of we were talking about the food source, but the preparation of food is absolutely so important. That's why if it's fresh, how it's being prepared, and you can put the love into it. You can store it in a way that is healthy and in a very clean environment that you've cleaned yourself. There is so much personal energy that goes into the food that we eat, whether we prepare it or someone else does. So there's a whole practice that I teach my clients. It's called kitchen sadhana. And sadhana is it literally means like an everyday ritual. It's something that you do every day, and you have a method of doing it. And it's such a lovely sort of an insurance that if you are doing this every day, even when you don't feel like it, even when you don't feel motivated, if you do it every day, when you're doing it, it'll feel right. And you'll create a ritual that you love. So just, it's important to have the warm energy. But in the modern world, sometimes it's hard to get motivated. So if you do just understand the practices, understand the energy, and allocate some time. Over time, you'll grow to really love the outcome of good health, happy life, happy family. It's a wonderful practice to undertake, even though it takes some time.
Take some time. It's kind of
Yeah.
mindfulness, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I know another thing that you're involved in is face yoga. This is something that I've seen you offering from time to time. Maybe you could just give us a little bit more information about that.
Oh, sure. Thank you for asking about it. So this is so I'm a yoga teacher as well, and I love adding yoga to my clients' health program because for a while I was just doing the food and private chefing and Ayurvedic consulting, and what became very clear to me is that, you know, if you're not moving, it's just none of this is really going to work 100%. So I also teach yoga practices, and the face yoga is just something that I became very excited about because as I get older and I'm working with mostly women over 35, they're impacting their families. I thought this would be such a lovely addition because it's helped me identify a little bit more with my age. I feel like if I can mold my face in my own way, it's making me feel brighter. It also has the effect of creating good blood circulation in the face. I notice a rosier glow, and I just love it. So this is just part of what I'm doing with my clients to help them feel uplifted and supported in their identity as they age.
Okay, so it sounds like you're involved in quite a few things with your nutritional work and your yoga work, and chefing, I suppose, is in your family right now. But do you cater for events or anything like that? Do you do that kind of thing?
So I used to. I'm pretty much retired from that kind of work.
Okay.
It's very physical, and it doesn't really allow that kind of scale cooking. It doesn't really allow for the energy that I really want to put into the food that I prepare. Um, and then I was a private chef before the pandemic, and it was really the pandemic that moved me into more of this consultative approach with my clients online. And that has, I feel like I'm creating more of an impact in people's lives by being able to reach more people in this way than as having, as you know, a morning booked at 5 different clients' homes or just 2 different clients' homes, depending upon the week. I'm not really making much of an impact with all of this knowledge that I have. So I'm really enjoying sharing this more with more people.
Okay. Gosh,
Yeah.
very busy. Being a very busy person, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it's good. And I love the yoga, food, faith, like it's just very holistic. And really being able to take like your matter in your own hands with your own practices and rituals, I think is very empowering to the individual. And, you know, we're less reliant upon going somewhere to do a yoga class or going somewhere to get a facial or, you know, you can, this is all stuff you can do on your own, and it's more effective if you do it yourself anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, especially, you know, if places start shutting down again, it's good that you can, you know, take care of yourself, you know. That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so where could people find out more about your work?
Oh, thanks for asking. So I have a website, yoginiprana.live or
Yep.
.live. I chose that. You can find all of my offerings there. And I'm also on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. And I am just so delighted to be able to share this with your viewers and listeners. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's been wonderful to hear your story, and I'll give a link to is it a website you have? that you mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I'll do that too.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I'll give a link to that in the description, then people can know where to find you. Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you ever so much, and thank you for doing the course too. I'm so delighted to know that it's been really helpful for you.
Oh, it was really changing for me. It just kind of got me settled in, like, okay, am I serious about this, or what am I doing? Like, am I just like doing whatever? But the nature of the animals in the world, I don't think it's fair for us to take from them when they're perfectly healthy, lovely ways, and we can support organic farmers more by eating more of a plant-based diet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a perfect note to end on. So thank you so very much, Angela, for being with me today. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for listening in and watching once again. And do join us next time. Bye for now.